Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's ANX Technology Webcast, Next Generation PCI for Retail. My name is Chad Leedy, and I'm a Product Marketing Manager at ANX. To our audience, please note that this is just one of a multi-part series on best practices related to PCI compliance and security. For more information on upcoming webinars, please visit www.anx.com. Before we begin, let's cover a few logistical details. First, all lines will be in listen-only mode for the duration of the conference. Second, we want to hear from you, and we will have a Q&A session at the end of the webcast with Paul. Please submit your questions at any time during the presentation using the Q&A box or the chat window on your right, and we will cover as many as possible. And keep in mind you can ask questions at any time, and we will definitely answer your questions throughout the webinar. Last, we will be sending you a link to the recorded webcast shortly after the event for your review. So, the fun giveaways. As a gift for attending the webinar, we will be giving every attendee a $5 gift card to Starbucks, and we will be giving additional gift cards away during the webinar to the first person to answer various questions correctly. One attendee of this webinar will also receive a $50 best gift card at the end in a random drawing, so make sure you stay tuned after the Q&A. As a bonus, all attendees will also be entered into a drawing to win a free iPod Shuffle at the end of our PCI webinar series. And this is the actual, the last webinar in that series, so this week we will be notifying the winner of that iPod Shuffle. With that, it's my pleasure to introduce our featured speaker, Paul Arsenault, our Chief Marketing Officer here at ANX. Paul joined ANX in 2010 as the company's CMO with more than 20 years of security, technology, development, and marketing leadership experience. Prior to ANX, Paul served as Vice President of Business Management at Tipping Point, where he oversaw product management and drove process for the company's operation. Prior executive positions include Vice President of Engineering and General Manager for Pinpoint Technology, and Vice President and General Manager for Siemens Efficient Network Service Management Business Unit. With that, let's dive into the presentation. Paul, the floor is yours.
Great. All right, so we're going to actually start off here first with the first quiz here, just real quick. It's a tribute to this 1970s show, who one of the main characters recently passed away. So for our first quiz and a chance to win a $5 Starbucks gift card, what is the name of this sitcom? So if you just want to type that right in there on your questions, first winner will be announced here in just a second.
Just use your chat function, and if you'll type in the answer to that question. Oh, we already got one.
Wow, that was quick.
Debbie Strossner. Sorry, Debbie, if I'm not pronouncing your name right. Well, everybody's...
All right.
Everybody's got it. Great.
All right. Thanks, Debbie. And by the way, the person that passed away was Juan Epstein or Robert Hages, who recently passed away. So it was last couple of days. Okay. Now on to serious stuff. Why are we here? Well, first of all, let me take a step back real quick and just talk quickly. If you guys do, let's keep this as interactive as possible. If you do have any questions, please enter them into the chat box there. And we'll make sure that if there's a good pause that we can, we'll try to answer your question in context when you ask it. Otherwise, we'll just keep going, and maybe we'll take some at the end. We'll just try to manage as best we can. So why are we here today? A lot of the things that we're finding in the industry today is that any industry, as things move forward, as technology progresses, there's a lot more technology available and a lot more resources available for businesses. And so from a PCI compliance perspective, with all the trends in the PCI market going towards mobile, cloud, e-commerce, those sorts of things, a lot of people paying by goods and services through mobile devices, through the cloud, are increasing exponentially. 40% right here from Juniper Research for just mobile payments. So that's just payments from your cell phone and those sorts of things. E-commerce sales will reach $278 billion in 2015. Cloud-based solutions, they offer a lot of cost savings, business flexibility to retailers, and a lot of things such as this. And the question is, a lot of people ask, when we talk to a lot of people, is what does the cloud mean for me as a business? What is this going to do to change my business? How is this going to affect my business? Hopefully, if we do our job here in this webinar, we will help explain some of that, talk about some of the risks, some of the pros and the cons, and some of the other things that you will need to deal with and need to address with any sort of compliance or security story from within a cloud basis, particularly for your PCI compliance questions. When we look at PCI compliance, it's beyond just iPad, iPhone, those sorts of applications. Smartphones in general, there's more than 1 billion of these that will be out in the wild expected by 2013. That's just a year away from now. There's a lot of new technologies on how do I pay via mobile phones, how do I pay via the web, mobile wallets, carrier billing, NFC sorts of technology. All of these sorts of technologies really make it very easy for people to pay. I don't know about you guys, but I like it when it's easy to take people's money from them. I also think that I like it when it's easy for me to give my money out. Maybe not at the end of the banking day, but from those standpoints, I really think that it's healthy. Mobile commerce is expected to grow. It's getting huge, and so we see this trend continuing, and it's not going to stop. So, what are the good things about this? How does this help a retailer, or how does this help somebody in general? When we've done a lot of our research on this area, we found several resonating trends and facts that we found that really help both small retailers and large ones alike. Number one is it's easy to take money from anybody, anywhere, at any time. This is key. Like I said, we love it when our customers take money from their customers, right? That's really a good thing. It really helps commerce. It really helps move things forward. You also have the ability for a wider reach of customers. When you think about it, let's just take even some of the pizza delivery things that I've seen these days. You can go online and build a pizza online, right? Those sorts of tools. It's great advertising. It works very well for, at least in that case, for the pizza industry. But there's other industries as well that really benefit just as well. With the advent of Groupon and those sorts of things, the ability to reach a wider set of customers with less advertising dollars is really a huge deal for this. Also, you have unlimited storage of data, context-sensitive marketing, and those sorts of things. It's real easy now to latch onto tools that allow you to figure out on Sunday what's my best day and what sort of people are buying from me. All those sorts of customer data metrics now that can be pulled and driven and really explored to help further your business. And then, of course, the last thing, which is kind of a touchy-feely, but it's really true, is people with an online presence that take a lot of these newer technologies kind of have that it factor. Examples, Apple, Starbucks, Nike, those sorts of outfits now. Why do we like Apple so much? Well, they're kind of cool, right? It's kind of hip, those sorts of things. And that customer perception we found really goes a long way, and this technology is really kind of a good way to show that. Not to mention, it also helps you save money on the back end, a lot of this. It's a lot easier to take money this way and not have to worry about money being pocketed or even just commitments and contracts and handling those sorts of things become a lot easier in a mobile commerce sort of environment. So on the negative side, what sort of things should I be exposed to? Which sort of things am I subject to challenges with? Number one is that wireless technology and not even just wireless, but a lot of this high tech stuff it's easier to hack. It's infinitely easier to get into, and so there's this term that we use. Actually, it's here. It's this hacker versus retailer arms race. The better sophisticated controls you put into place, the more sophisticated the hackers get. For a long time, it was simply based. In order for somebody to rob a retailer or store or any sort of entity, you almost had to go in there and to physically rob them. Not quite the case so much anymore. And a lot of times, retailers don't even know where their data resides, so they don't even know if they've been hacked. They don't even know if they've had stuff taken, and those sorts of constructs become very, very ubiquitous in the cloud. It's hard to tell where your data is and how you could potentially be hacked or breached or engineered against, if you will. And then one of the biggest challenges that we see for a lot of retailers is that the increased regulations for retail make it difficult for you to keep abreast as to what's going on in the industry and what sort of things should I really be concerned about. What are the best practices of other retailers out there? What sort of construct should I use in my overall plan for security and for compliance? I believe that these things, it's up to every retailer to understand, are these things, do the risks outweigh the challenges? And I think that what we have to come to a realization with as an industry is that, yes, these sorts of high-tech constructs, mobile computing, online web ordering, credit card process transactions, and the way they're being done today, these things are not going to change. We're going to continue with this trend, I think, for a long time. I think we're just barely scratching a dent on the surface of what's to come. And I believe that this is where we really, as an organization, from retail organization standpoint, really need to figure out what is our compliance plan, what are our security plans, and how do I protect against these following sorts of threats and these sorts of constructs.
Great, thanks, Paul. So before we move forward, we're going to have another little opportunity to get a Starbucks gift card. So the next slide is going to talk about data breaches by industry type. So where do you think that retail ranks when it comes to data breaches by industry? Do they rank first, second, third, fourth, fifth? Use your chat function, and we've already got some answers coming in. Don't see the right one yet. Oh, Ann Robinson got it right. So retail ranks as the next largest industry seeing compromises. Food service is the first. Yeah, and it's amazing how big of a chunk those two are based on everybody else. And we see it, and we see the reasons why. And the funny thing is, data breaches in this term are targeted a lot of times specifically. What we used to see was hackers and those sorts of people spread a very wide net originally and would drag in from there. Nowadays, we are seeing exact, very pinpointed sorts of technologies used to hack into a retailer. For example, maybe it's a point-of-sale system for a particular food service item, or maybe point-of-sale for retail, or maybe it's they just know how to get into the building, or they know how to hack the network, or the credit card processor. Even at some of the gas stations we've seen, there are ways where they've been able to insert a little insert inside the card swipe badge. And so anytime somebody swipes their card at the pump, sure enough, it's charging their card, but they're also maintaining a copy for themselves. We're seeing a lot higher targeted sort of breaches and data theft these days, and it really lends itself well to meeting, particularly in the retail and the food service. And so why do they hit these industries? It's actually, when you really get down and think about it, it has to do with the ease of which you can get there. When we go to a lot of these retail places, we'll ask them, what's your training? What's your security training policies for your employees? And a lot of times we get blank stares, or we get no answer, which should tell you a lot. Really, it's less about, and with the sheer volume, it makes it a lot easier. So it's less about necessarily always how protected am I, but it's even just recognition. It's knowing that I need a plan in place. It's following through to that plan. So it's putting those two together in kind of a perfect blend in order to protect yourself on an ongoing basis. So when we look at a typical payment transaction for a retailer, it can be relatively complex. This is probably a little more complex than what people would typically think about. There's a lot of arrows, a lot of numbers, I'm not going to go necessarily into detail over the diagram, but if you look at everywhere one of those lightning bolts are, that is a potential area for data theft or a potential area for breach. Now, not all of these are going to be left up to the retailer themselves. A lot of these, your bank handle and
and they're in charge of. But when you think about it from I'll call it a cloud basis, in my mind, once a credit card number, once you swipe it on a credit card machine, or once it gets into your point-of-sale system, technically it's kind of in the cloud, right? Now, who knows where it goes from there, but do we know what that data path is? Do we know where we could potentially be exposed? And it's a complex problem because there's a lot of different entities involved. There's a lot of different communication back and forth involved. And in the end, you want to make sure that you protect your consumer. One of the things that I want to insert in here is, why do we want to protect our consumers so bad? So we have a lot of statistics on what it costs you as a retailer for data breaches. I could say the number one thing is, I don't know about you guys, but we've got a lot of people that work for the company or that we've worked with that own small retail businesses themselves. Some of them have worked with larger ones. But the number one thing they spend their money on is trying to garnish new customers and try to keep those repeat customers coming in. Well, think about it. One data theft, one breach that makes USA Today or even the local newspaper potentially is going to cut out repeat customers from coming in, not to mention new customers not wanting to come in. So the costs are astronomical. So making sure that you understand along this cycle here where your potential breach sections are, and am I doing all I can do as a retailer to support not getting breached, I think that is crucial to any organization. And if you take web transactions on the web, if you allow people to order pizza on the web, or if you allow online ordering, or if you're an eBay shop or anything like that, you've got a lot of the same challenges and a lot of the same issues. This drug isn't quite complex, but it still represents really the same kind of pain points and the same sort of things. And this is a lot more of kind of a cloud, I'll say, based infrastructure, because your web server probably is not hosted at your retail site. It could be, but it might not. A lot of people use Amazon.com. A lot of people use other web hosting sorts of services from Rackspace and whatnot. So all of these things need to be kind of mixed into your overall PCI compliance story. So why does retail need the cloud? Really, it comes down to several things. First of all, kind of a cost model. The less that you spend on these one of the cool things about the cloud is a lot of shared resources. You'll hear that a lot of times. Shared resources, virtual infrastructures, virtual machine, virtual hosting. It basically means that you're sharing components in a segmented way with other people. Now, it might be another retail. It could be anybody. But the idea here is it really lowers your operating costs. So your OpEx and your CapEx, for that matter, are both significantly less. It's also scalable against multiple locations. If you need more CPU time, if you need a bigger slice of the pie, you just pay for it. It's that easy. Instead of needing to do complete infrastructure overhaul and those sorts of things, you let somebody else manage that stuff. Also, speed to market. We found that any sort of SaaS-based sort of model that you might roll out from a web ordering service or from a new credit card process or from any of these sorts of things really help your time to market. And as we all know, time to market is great. It'd be nice if you could start making money today instead of 6 months from now. Those sorts of things really just make a huge impact and a huge difference on your business in a positive way. Also, new functionality around all the retail processes that we see, such as merchandising, shopping carts, those sorts of things, workforce management, business intelligence. All of these sorts of tools are all readily available for both smaller shops and larger, and even sharing amongst corporations. We do a lot of work with a lot of franchisors who want to provide tools to their franchisees for things such as time management, for project management. These sorts of tools now are easy for you guys to get back and forth, and it's not always just about just taking credit cards, right? There's a lot more to it. If you've got a customer name in a work order that leaks out, that maybe somebody jotted a credit card number in a comments field or those sorts of things, or even just maybe date of birth information or something like that for a customer, these all can really expose you from a compliance standpoint. So challenges and concerns, things that can impede your progress, right? A lot of data breaches. We've seen a lot of them. Retailers are wary. I mean, I don't know how many times we go into places and people say, oh, yeah, we can't do that. We're too scared. We don't have the right staff. We don't want to be in the business of security in order to adopt to some of these PCI regulations we need to adopt to, or in order to safely secure our network. We have a hard enough time getting the guy who leaves the store last to lock the door. How in the heck can we make sure that we know that when we intercept our point of sale system, everything's fine, or that maybe the manager hasn't on accident inadvertently loaded some malware on their system or something such as this. That is one of the biggest challenges that we do see from the retail space. Also, you definitely, personally identifiable information is a huge problem. Just the threat of getting that stuff exposed. Once again, your name is sometimes the best thing you've got going in the marketplace. You spend a lot of time marketing that name, advertising that name. And it could take one breach to really get the whole thing tumbling down and really get you going in the wrong direction. And so that is really a huge concept that we've seen with the recent breaches of the Sony PlayStation Network and some of these others that we've seen. I know a lot of people that cancel their service based on this, right? If it's not secure and there's no trust factor there. So how do you get your customers to trust you again once this happens? And those are huge security concerns. Storage of information. Is it stored in a compliant way? Am I doing all I can do to ensure that it's stored right? Are my partners, are they protected as well? What sort of questions do I need to ask? How do I ask those questions? These are all huge security concerns. And multi-tenant approach, we talked about this as well. And then, of course, monitoring. How do I monitor this, right? I don't have the IT staff to do this. What's it going to cost me? How do I manage these sorts of things? So those are all the issues that people are concerned about and that we hear over and over again in a lot of our meetings and discussions that we have across the industry. So not to belabor the point, but user data in the cloud, right? Where is it? I have no idea. And this is one of the things that we see more from a larger retailer base that we see quite often is a lot of times when we go down and do assessments, one of the first questions we ask is, where are all your data centers? Where's all your database? Even beyond that physically, what logical are they all located in? And nobody really has that mapped down well, nor do they really have an understanding of what area that they're in. With the advent of PCI 2.0, they put a lot of new rules and regulations into place into doing computing in the cloud, and into taking data and storing it in the cloud and these sorts of things. But if you think that just adhering to some of the standards is enough, you're wrong. It takes a complete evaluation of what you're doing, how you're doing, to really be able to maintain compliance in a PCI 2.0 world. It's more about just checking some boxes and doing a self-assessment and hoping that everything is wrapped up and good to go. It really takes some expertise in these areas. So how do I better protect myself? How do I ensure that I, as a retailer, or I as a corporation, or even I as a franchise, am doing all I can do to ensure that I'm protected, right? Number one is, and these are all just 101 things. I'm sure you guys have heard a lot of these things, but I'll go over them just real quick here. Number one is designate a team to coordinate the information security program. You got to at least have somebody assigned to look at it, right? Look at the problem. And maybe this person isn't the end-all, be-all. Maybe this isn't somebody that knows your business as well as they could, or maybe it's not somebody that's in the IT space, but at least having it documented and at least even knowing what you don't know is just as important. So that then you can come up with plans and steps to resolve these sorts of issues. Number two, identify internal and external risks. That's really what it's about, is really where am I risky, what keeps me up at night. If what keeps you up at night as a retailer is ruining your brand name and that brand equity that you spent so much to build, okay, then does our internal and external risk balance that equity? And that's really what we try to do. Security, confidentiality of personal information, credit cards, all those sorts of components within there are things that we all need to be concerned about. Establish safeguards. What is my plan to resolution if a challenge does arise? How do I ensure that when something does happen, the right people are notified and the right things happen so that we stop the breach as early as possible? Or how do I even know that I have the right checks in place to tell if there is the right thing happening? And next is kind of an interesting one. A lot of banks, for at least some of the smaller retailers and even some of the larger ones as well, they have programs in place to help you with some of this stuff. It's not always enough. It's a good starting place. Let me tell you, banks, they're not necessarily in it to protect your brand. Now, maybe to a degree they are a little bit, but they're really in it to protect themselves because they have the same fines levied against them if a breach occurs as what a retailer would. So it's really up to them to make sure that you guys are following something, but it doesn't necessarily always protect you against the complete deep end of what could potentially happen. And of course, last is data encryption, multi-layered security techniques, all of these sorts of things. I don't expect many retailers to necessarily be able to dig as deep into this space. A lot of retailers have really smart IT guys that do this and do it quite well. But what we found is that this is something, your business is not to be a security firm. Your business is really to protect yourself and to protect your brand name and your brand equity. And a lot of times it's hard to hire a good IT person into some of these industries. It's difficult. And so these are some of the sorts of things you need to make sure that you look at, that you've got the right capabilities in order to do this.
So before we continue, Paul, we have a question that I want to make sure that we get answered. Derek has a question. Are there any examples of when an e-tailer is not a good candidate for using cloud service?
It's interesting. There definitely are. It also comes down to kind of your definition of cloud. It's a very interesting concept because the fact that you're even using a web service at all, technically you are in the cloud. Now, to go and actually outsource your whole infrastructure into a cloud-style environment, I think it's kind of on a case-by-case basis. But if you're looking at people that don't fit in well with this sort of implementation, it's going to kind of come down to, hey, if you've got the right IT staff for security and the ability to really protect yourselves, and if you can sleep well at night, those actually make you a candidate to be able to do it on your own. But as far as pushing out to the cloud, it's going to depend on what the needs are. I think that what we're finding in the industry overall, even beyond retailers, but just overall the computer IT industry, there is more stuff outsourced now than you could ever imagine. There's more stuff that is in a cloud-style environment, and it's because the people that offer the applications. I mean, we know now there's some point-of-sale vendors that operate solely in the cloud. And so the question is as an e-tailer, if I am able to take phone orders as well, I've got these two things linked, you've got some cloud infrastructure there as well. So it's really going to take a point-by-point decision as to what fits for me, what doesn't, am I secure, am I not, and how do I best manage that portfolio? So I think I didn't really answer your question fully. I'm not as happy with my answer, but it is kind of a case-by-case basis. People that should not be doing cloud stuff, in my mind, are people that can't handle the security aspects of it, right? It reminds me of Jack Nicholson, you can't handle the truth, right? It's that sort of thing. If you don't think you can handle the cloud infrastructure, what it takes, you've at least got to take a serious look at it. Now, it doesn't mean you shouldn't do it outright, but you should definitely take an objective look at what you're trying to accomplish. I will admit, the cost savings as to pushing stuff out to a true cloud infrastructure, doing yourself, is phenomenal. Sometimes, depending on the size of the e-tailer, it could even be enough to justify hiring a security expert in full-time. And once again, I don't know that for a fact, but it can. So you have to just kind of leverage those things across. But there are several key components that I would look at when doing that. Particularly making sure that, even the things on this sheet that are up right now are really things that you need to look at when you decide if you're going to go to a cloud infrastructure or not. Now, from a technology perspective, it's going to be a case-by-case basis on what's available out there. I remember a few years ago looking at cloud infrastructure and different cloud components, and I was actually pretty upset at what was available out there on the cloud. Everybody was talking about it. It was coming, boy, it's coming, and there wasn't much out there. Well, nowadays, boy, let me tell you, there's a lot out there on the cloud that you can do, even a lot of the payment transactions. When you think about it, PayPal from eBay, that's a cloud service. So if you use PayPal, you're already in the cloud, any way you look at it. Now, your security structures are different. I don't want to say blame, but some of that responsibility to them to make sure they've got their stuff involved. In fact, if you even engage a cloud provider, ask them, what are your PCI security charter? What does it look like? what are you doing to ensure that my data is PCI compliant? And 99% of them are going to have answers back for that because they're in this business and they're used to it.
Also, Derek had a second question. Is tokenization generally used in the cloud?
Yes. I say yes. That's a qualified yes. That's something you have to ask the individual ones, but yes, we've seen several different tokenization sorts of policies for the cloud to be able to use things such as RSA tokens and these sorts of things to ensure that the right user is being used, is authenticated the right way. Dual-factor authentication is a big component of the PCI DSS 2.0 standard, actually the 1.0 standard as well. And so in our mind, yes, that is one valid way to do it. There are several other ways as well, but that is definitely a component of it. And a lot of people are looking at better ways to answer that question. A lot of the implementations that I've seen, Derek, are, I don't want to say hacked together, because that's probably being a bit harsh, but they're not as easy as they should be. Now, once again, security doesn't have to be hard. That's always been my understanding or my belief, is that if it's difficult, we can always find an easier way to do it without necessarily compromising security. But there are definitely tokenization sorts of constructs that do exist out in the cloud that can be used. In fact, we've dealt with a few that actually I think have some pretty good solutions out there to tackle security in this fashion.
Okay, great. Thanks, Paul.
All right. So let me talk a little bit about ANX's solution and kind of what we feel that we can kind of that we do, and kind of I want to take a little more time. I don't want to make this a total commercial, so I want to talk a little bit more about the approach. And this is the approach that ANX takes. It's not necessarily the only approach. It's not necessarily that you have to use ANX to take this approach. If you as a retailer want to do this on your own and can do these sorts of things as well, these approaches are fairly well established. It's a lot of times though people need help along the way, and that's kind of where ANX wants to be. So we offer a lot of different services in this whole area. Connectivity, compliance, security sorts of services that are all kind of managed services, if you will. So we can take what you've got, figure out where the best parts are, where your risks are. We can do risk assessments. We can even do things such as assist you at time of needing to answer questions on reports on compliance and those sorts of things. We can definitely help in these areas to ensure that you've got the right controls in place and you're protecting yourself as best as you can. So our philosophy overall. And of course, ANX's name is on this, but you could strip that and just even put your name on there as a retailer as well. But when we look at an engagement and when we look at what companies need to do to ensure that their PCI compliance is in range, that they're doing the right things from a security standpoint, that they're worried about the right problems, that they've got the right controls in place to remediate if need be, that they're following the right certification rules, and keeping ongoing maintenance going. It's an ongoing process. There's a lot to it. There's a lot of intricacies that need to be followed. Once you have a plan in place, it's a little easier to continue following and continue going. But even sometimes when something changes, making sure that you're following these sorts of steps and keeping them going. One of the things that I think is the most difficult sometimes even to do from within your own company is just assessment of what you have, where you are, what you should be concerned about, and what sort of holes are there. There are a lot of kind of best practice sorts of tools available out there on the web and whatnot. And a lot of times for a lot of retailers, these might suffice. But what we've kind of found long-term is that a lot of times just kind of getting in there and continually to hit those points is really what's needed. And every network, every security policy, every compliance policy is different. I don't think I've ever seen a one-size-fits-all. Now, there's general guidelines in which they all fit, but custom-tailored plans for you and your business is definitely what's needed. What might protect you might not protect somebody else. What's protecting somebody else, chances are, is not going to fully protect you. So more about our offering here, we've kind of tried to take a standpoint of knowing retailers, knowing the ways this thing works is we try to really manage this in a way to where we know that your business is not to be in the security business. It's not to be in the compliance business. It's kind of a dirty piece of business, if you will, for you guys, particularly when you're trying to sell your products and your services and to your own customers. So take this away from you. You don't need to worry about this, right? What tools are changing? As PCI standards continually increase, we just, beginning of January, now we have to do the PCI 2.0 DSS standard. As standards change, am I still compliant? Am I still doing the right things? Hey, I've got this new form I got to fill out now. Is it still the same? How do I do it? Those sorts of things, you shouldn't need to worry about a lot of that stuff. It should be as automated as possible and as easy to do as possible and tailored fit to your business. So, compliance and security consulting, for me, this is definitely something you could do on your own. And I don't want to go too far as saying ANX is the only way to go. I'm a firm believer that, if your environment's easy enough, it's the difference between doing the 1040EZ form and the 1040A form on your taxes, right? There's ways you can do it on your own and just with a little bit of software or just filling out the forms by hand, you can do it. But you really, in certain instances, you really want somebody to step through it step by step to help you find every last deduction you can, to help you find every last credit you can get, to help you find every last component that you need in order to file a good tax return, right? I think of it very much that way. So as I look at it, I mean, I hire a personal accountant to do my taxes. We also hire a personal accountant to do our company's taxes. So in my mind, it's the same sort of piece from a consultative basis to help you get to where you need to be. And once again, even in a consulting sort of arena, one size does not fit all. It's got to be tailored to the individual customer, what you need, and how you need it.
Great.
So, in the end, this is kind of the why ANX slide, right? One other thing to mention, I'll let you guys read through these. I don't have to necessarily go through all these. But we are compliance experts. We don't just do PCI DSS compliance. We also do a lot of more general GRC sorts of engagements, vendor risk management sorts of components. Even the linkage between business partners, right? Are my partners, do they have the right compliance aspects to their process that allows me to be compliant as well? We look at partnerships and even kind of the franchisor, the franchisee relationship, right? How are we passing data back and forth there? Are we sure that my franchisees are compliant? Can I see the compliance? And these sorts of components for us are really a huge part of the overall story. And in the end, it's really to protect your business. And that's really why we're in business. If I look at the reason why ANX does this sort of thing, it's really to ensure that you guys are, A, you've got the right area of expertise in your company, and B, to really protect your business. And that's what we come to do.
All right, great. Well, this is the portion of the webinar where we get to let you guys ask questions. And so feel free to use your Q&A box. I think everybody knows how to use it now based on your answers, to ask Paul questions. We actually do have a couple of questions that have already come in, and so we'll start with those, and you guys can chime in as we go. So one is, if my bank says that I'm PCI compliant already, what else do I need to do, and why would I need additional services?
So, first of all, the bank cannot say you're PCI compliant, just outright. It needs to be done on an assessment basis. Now, banks do have programs where they'll a lot of times give you a web portal to be able to log in and to be able to track your compliance and those sorts of things. But just having somebody say you're compliant isn't. I mean, there's a lot more to compliance than even the technology aspects of it. Are your cashiers trained on how to handle a credit card? Do they put in the credit card back to a back office to swipe? Well, that right there could be a control that's out of whack. Do I even have the right physical security in place? All of these things are in there as well. And so just your bank claiming compliance does not necessarily mean that you are compliant. And once again, there are fines that could be levied if you're not, and those sorts of things as well. So, but once again, the banks do give a lot of some of the smaller processes, credit card takers, they do give them some tools themselves in order to try to help with their compliance issues, because the bank sees this as an issue as well. And by the way, they're just as liable as you are to ensure that they are compliant. So the banks want compliance from the retailers as well.
Great. So we had a question about PCI 2.0. Does PCI 2.0 address everything that I need to know about next generation technologies in the cloud?
So yeah, that's interesting. We get asked this question a lot, and I don't want to necessarily beat a dead horse, but without a doubt, PCI 2.0 has taken a lot of strides to help get us there. It's not the save-all, end-all, be-all, and I think a lot of this is the one good thing about the PCI DSS regulations is that they do remove a lot of the questions. They do at least give you a framework by which compliance needs to happen. They do give you a better regulated way to answer these questions. And I actually applaud the Standards Committee for their ability to do this. If I look at the other areas, HIPAA and some of the other areas that we're in, SOX and some of these others, it's a lot more difficult to do this. So they've really taken a more pragmatic approach to the problem, and they at least give you the ability to ask the right questions. They don't necessarily give you all the ammunition, all the inputs you need in order to do this, because there's compensating control that you can worry about. And it might be, well, I'm kind of compliant, but not really, so what does that mean for me? So a lot of these sorts of things, it's a good guideline, it's a good place to start. I would also like to think that if I owned a business, I would want to make sure that I was as protected and as squeaky clean as possible. And, of course, I'd like to do it with the least money possible, right, the least amount of expenditure as possible. So there's definitely a balance there. And I think PCI 2.0 gets you a good part of the way there, but not completely.
Great. We'll have a couple more questions. One, again from Derek, is ANX a QSA or ASV for PCI?
Yes, both of the two. So one of the things I did not talk about was kind of a lot of these sorts of areas. So yes, we are a QSA. We've got full QSA functions that we can do to help out if companies become stranded along the way. We also can do the full suite of. We also have the full suite of tools from a compliance standpoint. Firewall sorts of services, internal and external scanning, file integrity monitoring. All of these sorts of tools are things that we have in our repertoire, and that we're more than happy to talk to anybody about if you're interested.
Okay. Another question: what's the best pathway to making sure that I'm prepared for storing data in the cloud?
So. And it really comes down to, and I don't know how much more I can say this. When we develop a product from ANX or from any product shop I've ever been at, the first thing you do is you gather requirements, right? What are my storage requirements? After you do that, then you go and you do your design. Okay, so I'm going to start to design this. Once you get the design done, then you go and you review that design for integrity, right? Is it securely? Is the security piece of it? Does it have the right integrity I need? Am I protected from risk correctly? Do I have the right controls in place? If there are some risks there, that I can mitigate those. And you really need to go vet that design out. And so kind of the pathway there in my mind is you really need to take a hard look at what you're trying to accomplish, and can you meet those requirements, as well as on the back end, can I meet the security requirements that I need? Really the best way is to really start lining it up. Read those PCI 2.0 questionnaires and make sure, is there anything in here that's even a question for me that I might feel like I'm not protected or that I'm not handling correctly?
Great. Thank you. Well, want to be respectful of everyone's time and wrap up on time. So we want to thank everyone for joining us. And before we wrap up, we did promise you a drawing for a $50 Best Buy gift card. And so everybody that's still on, that's lasted, is eligible for that. So I'm going to do my magic sorting process here. Very technical. All right, it looks like Adam is our winner. So congratulations, Adam. We'll be getting in touch with you after the webinar today to make sure you get that. Also, we will be doing the iPod Shuffle giveaway this week. So you'll be getting an email if you want. I would also recommend, actually, the way that we're going to give away the iPod Shuffle, I almost forgot. We're going to exclusively give it away by using our Facebook page. So if you want to know if you won, you have to go on Facebook to find out. And so we'll be posting some updates, but this week we will actually post that winner. So just go. I believe it's ANX eBusiness on Facebook.
So I'm guessing there will be ways to contact us back for
Absolutely.
this, and we will obscure your name enough.
That's right.
Somehow.
Yeah, we won't let the cat out of the bag about your blood type and everything. We'll make sure that it's fairly private. All right, well, thank you again. If you have any questions or you need any further information, I've already had a few people ask some specific questions and wanting more information. The presentation will actually be automatically sent to you after the webinar, probably tomorrow. So you'll get a thank you email with a link to the presentation and the slides, actually. But if you have any more questions about our programs, please feel free to give us a call at 1-800-658-8709. Thanks so much for attending. Great webinar. Thank you to Paul, and hopefully we'll see you for our next series. Have a great day. Bye-bye.